Hey Siri, what's my blood sugar?
You're 83 and steady.
Hey, I caught a Dr. Bernstein's perfect number. If you don't know what I'm referring to, 83 is the number that most non-diabetics sit at a lot. So 83 is a great number. It is a non-diabetic number. It's another unicorn, I guess you can call in the eyes of our world. Unicorn means 100 blood sugar or a 5.5. This would just be a little bit under a 5.5. It would be like a 4.5-ish in millimoles, but again, I'll convert it. And with that being said, let's jump into today's video. Hey everyone, it's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel. And today's video is kind of like the busting myths video, but I'm going to share 12 different things that you should not say to a type 1 diabetic. Now, many of you that do watch this channel are type 1 diabetics, and you know exactly what these pet peeves are about and how irritating and annoying they can be when somebody just comes up and they think they know everything about living with type 1 diabetes when they have not a clue what actually goes on and the pathogenesis and what actually entails. And you've got people that are making wrong assumptions, that are saying things that could really irritate you, and you got to kind of learn to just step it up and educate. Don't be afraid to educate people on your condition, because it just spreads awareness and it brings light to things that people didn't realize. But you also got to learn to not fly off the handle and offend people by getting all angry about it. Now, a couple times I've almost done this, but I had to bite my tongue back and say it in a very polite way, just because I obviously am not that kind of person to disrespect other people, even if they kind of disrespect or offend me or my autoimmune disease. And that's kind of how you have to kind of deal with it. Now, some of these statements I'm going to make are going to bother me or you more a little bit differently. There are certain ones that bother me more than they may bother you, and vice versa. Ones that don't really bother me as much may bother you more. But I'm just going to share 12 different things, and we're going to see how I interpret these and how we go through it. So with that being said, let's jump right into the list. So the first one I have on the list here, it says, do you have the good kind or the bad kind of diabetes? Now, this one kind of irritates me a little, although I haven't had a lot of people say it. But for those of you that don't have diabetes, there is no good or bad kind of diabetes. Type 1 and type 2 diabetes and the other types of diabetes like MODY and all the other rarer forms, they're all very serious. There is no bad or good kind. If the treatment plan of any diabetes, whether it's type 1 diabetes like myself, type 2, MODY, you get the point. If they are not properly treated, managed, or taken care of, they can all result in diabetic complications that have to deal with going blind, not being able to feel, problems with our hearts, and our kidneys failing. And those are the big top things that happen with people that don't control their blood sugars or don't take care of diabetes. I think what this kind of gets misconceived as is that, oh, if you have a good kind of diabetes, you don't have to take insulin shots. I got news for you. There are some people who are type 2 diabetics that have to take insulin shots because either A, they're allergic to medications, that they can't take the type 2 diabetic medications, or B, their pancreas is so burnt out that they no longer secrete enough insulin over years and years of not controlling type 2 diabetes. And there's some people that just can't do without it. So, and if you're a type 1 like me, you're automatically insulin dependent, whether it's just 1 injection, 3 injections, 4 injections, multiple injections, insulin pump, whatever the case may be, you have to have some form of insulin, because type 1 diabetics do not make insulin, whereas type 2 diabetics usually make some sort of, they make their own insulin, it's just that their body doesn't know how to properly respond to it. So I think that's where the good and the bad kind of get mixed up, but no matter the circumstance, there is no good diabetes. Diabetes sucks. It is not a disease I wish on anybody, no matter what type it is, and no matter what its pathogenesis or condition is on the person. It is not a fun thing to deal with. It's a lot of hard work and involvement to manage something that our body should be managing for us. And there's no good and there's no bad between different types of diabetes, and all different kinds of diabetes, they're all different. Whether or not it's type 1 or type 2, they're way different. Sometimes type 1 can be a little bit harder to control, only because we are stuck on synthetic insulin completely, so we're trying to work with artificial insulin. Whereas with the type 2, they still may have some aid from their pancreas, so it might make it a little easier, but still it's not exactly the same thing. Even if they did have aid from their pancreas as a type 2 diabetic, their disease progression could still be pretty hard on their body too. So no matter the circumstance, you have to take care of diabetes. There's no good, there is no bad. Number 2 is the pronunciation of diabetes. It's not diabetes. It's diabetes, like the B with the stinger. Diabetes, not diabetes. Okay, diabetes does not beat us. Diabetes is the bees that buzz and kids that blow dandelion fuzz. Okay, I'm singing something from Frozen. And I will do whatever snow does in summer. Okay, I'm not going to sing anymore. But you get the point. Now, the only times that I see this is people that don't really mean any harm. It's just people that have heard it pronounced that way, maybe in their childhood, or if they're an older adult, maybe that's how it was pronounced back then, or when they didn't know a lot about diabetes. My grandma's a classic example of that. She'll tell people, oh, my granddaughter has diabetes. And I gotta hold my tongue not to let it fly. I love my grandma. She has no ill intent by it. She's the sweetest 81-year-old I've ever met. She is just a doll. I admire her. She is an amazing role model for me. And when she says diabetes, I just say, yeah, I have diabetes. I'll just immediately kind of like fix it or repronounce it correctly, and she'll kind of like nod at me. And I think it's just like what she was taught when she was younger. And I hear some people call it like sugar diabetes or sugar diabetes. That kind of irritates me because it's not, yes, we cannot metabolize sugar properly. That is the definition of diabetes. But it's not caused by sugar most of the time. Type 2s could be caused by diet, but again, there's even maybe, like I said, some type 2s that no matter what they do, they're going to end up with insulin resistance in their life. But it is not induced by sugar. It's not called sugar diabetes. It's not called sugar diabetes. And I promise you, after this video, you will not be hearing me say the word diabetes. And like I said, I don't really mind it in my grandma because I know she means no harm by it. But if somebody is going to be real sarcastic and derogatory to me and say, oh, she's got diabetes, you know, that kind of way, I'm obviously going to, it's making my skin tingle just saying it like that. I promise you, I never will say it like that again. But if they say it in a real mean, nasty, derogatory way, then I know, then that irritates me more than like my grandma just saying, oh, my granddaughter has diabetes. Where she's a little more casual about it, or that's how she learned to pronounce it, if that makes sense. But if you're a non-diabetic, please pronounce it diabetes. Oh, you have diabetes. What kind do you have? What do you use to treat it? Stuff like that. And I would rather people ask questions about my disease than just automatically make an assumption that they know something. Oh, what's that thing on your arm? That little thing with the cool tape on it. And I'll say, oh, it's my Dexcom G6. Oh, what does that do? Basically measures my blood sugar. You get the point. You can start a conversation that way instead of them assuming like, oh, you trying to quit cigarettes? Or, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you have cancer. You have one of them cancer patches. No, it's actually a continuous glucose monitor. I have type 1 diabetes, and it helps me control my blood sugars better because I can see what they are at any point from my phone. You get the point here. The third one is, should you be eating that, or you better watch your sugar intake, you're a diabetic. And this irritates me a lot, especially since type 1 diabetics, our diet never induced the type of diabetes we have. And even a type 2 diabetic, you might get annoyed at this. You can treat yourself as long as you are doing it in moderation. And if you're a type 1 diabetic, you can treat yourself as much as you like as long as you know how to dose yourself for it and get the insulin timing right. I have no diet restrictions, you guys. I'm not diet restricted to anything. I eat junk. And I eat junk sometimes more than I should. But when I do eat that junk, I am very careful about A, the portion size, or B, how much I'm going to dose myself and the timing of the dose so that I can properly metabolize it and keep my blood sugars between 70 and 140, and even more ideally between 70 and 120 or 130, because that's about as high as a non-diabetic will go. You just got to be bold with your insulin. You got to be aggressive in your treatment. And you got to understand that if you don't do that, there is consequences of suffering from high blood sugars, which in turn, you know, can lead to diabetic complications. The fourth one is kind of an example one, but you guys get the point. Oh, I know a lot about diabetes. My grandma has it, and she had her legs amputated. Oh, my dear Lord. First of all, we don't want to hear about your grandma getting her legs amputated because that's just kind of, I don't know, weird and kind of like freaky and kind of gross. Second of all, the type of diabetes that your grandma has is probably not type 1 diabetes. unless she had it from a pretty young age, or she was confirmed to have antibodies in her blood and no insulin production from at any point during her time, even if she was in her 60s when she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and she was confirmed type 1, she probably does not have type 1 diabetes. She most likely has type 2 diabetes, and the reason why that she had her legs cut off is probably because she did not properly take care of her blood glucose levels, and those blood glucose levels were high consistently for many, many years, and in turn caused her to either have a sore that didn't heal, or she couldn't feel her feet anymore, and they didn't want to risk getting an infection, so they removed it. So, first of all, anybody that says that, I automatically know they're pretty much talking about a type 2 diabetic, or somebody that didn't well control their diabetes, or didn't care enough to control their diabetes. And I just don't like hearing that kind of stuff. This one kind of bothers me, but at the same time, I just kind of like learn to brush it off, because sometimes people are just trying to help when they're in reality not helping at all. But don't tell me about your grandma's amputated legs or amputated arms or whatever happened to her for being diabetic. I don't want to hear about that. This is not cool. Not cool to say to a type 1 diabetic. Number 5, this one I actually experienced. Couple times. I mentioned I went to Quick Trip. I went and got paid for gas or paid for a pack of gum for my mom, and the one lady who I knew through church and her kids, she basically said, "Oh, I'm not going to even offer you cake donuts because I know you can't have them." And I kind of went, huh? I said, "I have diabetes." I said, "But I have type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease, and basically I can have anything and everything I want as long as I properly dose myself for insulin." I said, "My problem is my own body attacked itself, and I can no longer make my own insulin." I said something along those lines, and she kind of like got taken aback, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry." Like, she didn't say that, but I could tell by the look in her face, she was like really apologetic. And I took the minute to educate her. Now, I was ready to fly off the handle, but again, I held myself back, and I just kind of gave her some basic education about the type of diabetes I have, and I dealt with that. So that leads into number 5, is somebody else said this exact thing to me. "You better tell everybody to stop eating a bunch of sugar or they're going to end up like you." This person, I like her. She's a nice person, but she, again, was assuming that all diabetes is caused by diet. That is not the case. She was, again, thinking of a type 2 diabetic most of the time, or another type of diabetes that's induced by diet or poor lifestyle, etc., etc. And she said, "Oh, you better tell this young girl," who I knew, "she better stop eating a bunch of sugar like you did, or she's going to end up just like you." And the thing I responded with was, first of all, I said, I don't have a diet-induced diabetes. I said, the type of diabetes I have is called type 1 diabetes, which used to be called what you probably knew as juvenile onset diabetes. It is no longer called that anymore, but it basically means that I cannot produce insulin, and I can have anything and everything I want as long as I dose myself and get the timing right as far as proper treatment is concerned, and watch my blood sugar levels. And I said, by the way, I said, you do not have to be young to get this type of diabetes. I said, you are totally a healthy person, which she is physically. She is in good shape. I said, you could end up with type 1 diabetes at your age, which I believe she was in her 60s or 70s. I said, you don't have to be young to have it. At any point, your pancreas and your autoantibodies could destroy your pancreas beta cells and allow your body to basically shut off insulin production. So that's kind of how I got around that one. Again, that was another situation where I wanted to fly off the handle, but I told myself not to do that. Number 6 is it's way better than cancer or some other thing. Now, this one doesn't bother me as much, but it bothers probably a lot more people that may be watching this. I would agree. I think cancer is way worse than dealing with diabetes. However, type 1 diabetes is not a fun disease to have. And you don't really know or understand that unless you live with it, or you are a close relative or friend of somebody who has the condition. You don't understand how difficult some days we have to physically go, mentally go, emotionally push ourselves through the day and keep our blood sugars in line. Because we are a full-time pancreas. Whether you realize it or not, we're always thinking ahead. Okay, I'm going to do some exercise. How much insulin do I have on board? Should I eat a snack before I do this? Okay, how many carbs are in this meal? Should I pre-bolus? Should I do a temporary basal increase? Oh, my blood sugar went really high for whatever reason. Do I need to increase the amount of insulin I'm taking? Or is my insulin bad? Did my insulin go bad? I got to take my basal dose. All these different things that come into play. And it's not an easy disease to manage. Like I said, I still think it's way better than cancer, but there is definitely, it's not the easiest thing, especially when you have a lot of people in this world have pancreases that function and they're non-diabetic. And people that are non-diabetic, even like myself before I was diagnosed, I definitely didn't appreciate insulin as much as and the job it does in our body as much as it does. And sometimes you don't appreciate the things you have until you have them lost. And if there's a cure out there, or I could reverse my diabetes tomorrow, I would do it in a heartbeat. Because this disease is a very time-consuming disease. It's a very mentally straining disease sometimes, especially when you can't figure out all the different things that may have caused your blood sugar to go up, go down. It's not just as simple as it's not just food and insulin that affect your blood sugar. It's a whole array of things, which I talked about in a previous video. It is the stress that is put on your body. It's the anxieties you go through. It's hormones. It's activity levels. It's temperature. It's everything but the color of the sky, basically. So that's kind of how I interpret number 7 is you have a low blood sugar, you better take some insulin. This one is kind of just more of a joking one to me because I just kind of laugh that one off and say like, haha, insulin is designed to lower your blood sugar even more. If my blood sugar is low, I better eat some sugar to bring it back up. So that just shows sometimes the ignorance of people not understanding what insulin does in the body. Insulin is designed to keep your blood sugars down in a normal range or bring high blood sugars down. Insulin is not designed to help a low blood sugar. If you have a low blood sugar, to a type 1 diabetic, that either means for us pretty much two things. Either we took too much insulin or we had too much activity that probably caused that low blood sugar. Not always the case, but those are the two main things that we think of. Oh, we took too much insulin for this meal, or we did too much activity in correspondence with this time period to cause a low blood sugar. Number 8 is you have an autoimmune disease, you're sick, you're going to always be sick, you're going to be always more prone to different things. And you can't do anything. You can't have exercise, you can't have a career, you can't have kids. Again, this ties into more with the mislinked, but this is not the case. You can do pretty much everything and anything with type 1 diabetes as long as you know how to manage properly. And no matter where you're in, that people know that you need to be able to manage this condition in any circumstance because things can turn around like the drop of a hat and you don't even know it. Because we are a manual pancreas, basically. And when you're a manual pancreas, things can go manually wrong. The body tries to perfectly align blood sugars in a non-diabetic, but if you are a type 1 diabetic, you are at full control of the pancreas wheel, and you better know how to steer it and steer that boat the right direction and fix things when they go wrong and be able to do so and still live your life. Don't ever let this disease stop you from living your life. That is a huge thing, and that is a hard thing that you may have to get past. But do anything you want. Have children if you're a lady, if you're a guy. Produce a child with a woman. Have the career you want. Exercise when you want. You just need to have a few more steps into that process. There's just a few extra things that we got to do to kind of deal with that in a way, I guess you could say. Number 9, which I had happen to me the other day. Someone told me this, and it didn't really offend me as much because, again, he was just more like perplexed and curious. But, oh, you're healthy and you're not really a fat person. You're not overweight. How do you have diabetes? And again, type 1 diabetes is a very deceiving disease. Again, if it's not caused by diet, it's definitely not caused by the type of weight you are. Even if you were overweight when you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, the fact that you were a little overweight did not cause your diabetes. It is caused by your own body attacking your beta cells in your pancreas that secrete insulin, which is probably the 5th time I've said this in this video. But this is kind of a video, again, for diabetics and non-diabetics. So this guy kind of came up to me in the gas station, and he liked my Diabetic brandy backpack, and I kind of held it in the front of me because I was going to pay for my gas, and he's like, oh, he said, I wish it was cool for guys to carry a bag around. So I don't know what he was like getting at that, but I'm like, yeah, I said, I like this bag. I said, it's kind of cool. I said, it's small enough. I said, but it's not so large. I said, but it has to carry a bunch of supplies, save my life. I said, I have type 1 diabetes. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, you have diabetes? And he said something like, you have a fantastic looking body, and it kind of, not in a perverted way, but in kind of a more joking way. And I didn't feel uncomfortable And he's like, and I said, oh, I said, it's a very deceiving disease. I said, it's not induced by weight. It's not induced by diet. I'm a very healthy person. I eat very healthy. For the most part, I do eat junk like everybody else. I said, it's basically my own body attacked my own insulin. I said, and now I have to take insulin from an outside source. Kind of told him the whole background of that. And he was like, oh, well, good luck to you. And he said, I'm older. And he was like probably in his 50s or 60s. And I have nothing wrong with me. He said, that's so wrong for you to be like so young and have this disease. I said, that's kind of the thing with type 1 diabetes. It strikes a lot of young people, I said, but it also can strike a lot of older individuals. I said, you don't have to be young to have it, but I said, quite a few of us are definitely below 21 or 22 when we're diagnosed. So I said, it's just something that I've learned to deal with, and I said, I get that a lot from people, that a lot of people say that, oh, how can you have diabetes when you're not obese or overweight or you're in good physical condition? I said, it's a very deceiving thing. I said, I may look healthy, but what's going on inside as far as my insulin production, it is not working. I said, if I wouldn't take this insulin that I carry with me, or I have no low blood sugar treatments, I said, I could pass out, I could die, I could go into a coma. I said, it's a whole bunch of things. I said, it's a fine balance between life and death, and that's something we kind of have to deal with. So number 10 is, I don't know how you can inject yourself or prick your finger because I couldn't do it. And here's the thing for those people that say that. If it was a matter between living or dying, you definitely would be giving yourself injections or pricking your finger. Once you get used to and get comfortable with doing insulin injections, it's not that bad. And for those of you that have diabetes, know that the insulin needles are not very long anymore. They're maybe 4 to 5 millimeters at the very most. I use 5 millimeter 31 gauge pen needles, which are very, very small. Some people use a little longer, some people use a little shorter, but they're not 2-3 inch needles that are like 19 gauge. They're not these huge, big needles. And for those of you that don't know about gauge, the larger the gauge number, the thinner the metal is, and the bigger and the lower the gauge number, the thicker it is. And length, you obviously know, the shorter is the lower number. But the needles aren't very big. The lancets aren't big anymore. They've designed them to not hurt and scar our body as bad, so that we can use more injection sites and not worry about those ugly bumps and scars that kind of pop up. It makes it less painful, less likely to bleed, less likely to hurt. You get used to it, and once you're used to it and you get accustomed to it, it gets easier. It's not the same type of needles a doctor would put in you to draw blood. It's not the same type of needles that you see to sew with and all these different things that are bigger and longer and scarier. No, I mean, the needles are literally this big, which for you, it's tiny. I mean, and they're really, really thin. I mean, you can hardly see what they look like. They're smaller than the tip of this pen. You get used to it, you deal with it, and it's something, like I said, you become accustomed to. And if it was a matter between living or dying, I think you would all choose to give yourself an injection. And once you learn how to do it properly, you could do it. And the funny thing is, when I went into my dental office, like, you're going to have to learn to give local anesthesia injections for your dental hygiene school. And I said, I know. I said, I looked into the program, and I said, I'm already comfortable with using syringes and needles and stuff. I said, how is that? I said, I'm already such a pro at giving myself shots. Be cool to give someone a shot in the mouth for local anesthesia. Now you're probably thinking, yeah, but that's the kind of stuff that's up my alley, and I have to learn that kind of stuff. So I guess having this disease has made me more confident with different tools I never would have thought I would have had to use. One of the final things I'm going to talk about is, are you worried that you're going to die? We're all going to die. That's the one answer. That's the first thing I think of when we're all going to die. But I think when people say this, are you worried you're going to die a horrible, painful death because of diabetic complications? Something that's always in the back of our heads, constantly, we are living on the verge of death every day, basically, because insulin is a very, very dangerous drug if used improperly. Too much can kill you, too little can kill you. And you live on the verge of death every day, whether you realize it or not, if you are a type 1 diabetic. You're dealing with a pretty dangerous weapon, a dangerous hormone, and if used improperly, can result in death. You're going to die sometime, people. I hate to break it to you, but you are going to die sometime. As far as dealing with complications, that is always something that's in the back of our head, of dying, that kind of death. However, maintaining normal glycemia as much as possible, and keeping your A1Cs, at least my eye doctor says under 6.5. I personally believe under 6. Having A1Cs in the 5s or the 4s is going to keep you from getting complications in the future. Your complications are going to be minimal or non-existent. So do everything you can now to prevent those in the future. Don't worry about your death coming. If you're going to sit and worry about dying and dying and dying and dying again, what the heck is your life worth living if all you're going to do is sit and worry about when you're going to die? You're not going to enjoy the things in your life. You're not going to enjoy what's going on in the now. You're not going to enjoy the good things that happened in the past, and you're not going to be able to enjoy the things that are going to come for you in the future. So this is something you don't want to say to a diabetic. Are you afraid you're going to die? We live on the verge of death every day, so the answer is yes or no, depending on who you ask, but we're all going to die. I mean, that's the first response I would give somebody is, you know, you're going to die too of something, and it may not be the same way I'm going to die, but you're going to die someday. We're all going to pass from this earth. Our body and our heart will eventually stop beating. We will stop breathing. We will stop being able to see, smell, taste, function, move. We're going to cease to exist someday on this earth, and if you are a diabetic, take care of yourself now so that you can live a long, happy, and healthy life and die, I guess, I don't want to say normally because we all are going to die our own way, but die more peacefully, I guess you could say. Die in your sleep, or, you know, if you just pass away from old age or something simple, I guess you could say, instead of suffering with things. I guess that would be the route to take, because I'd hate to see any of you suffer through complications and die from those. So I hope you enjoyed this very long drawn out video about, I think there was like 11 or 10 different things that I think I said 12 at the beginning, but I think I only said 10 to 11 different things that you should not say to a type 1 diabetic. Let me know down below if there's any more that you would add to this list, or the ones that peeve you the most or upset you the most. I think I kind of shared that with you quite a bit. And if you enjoyed this kind of long video that kind of explained things, give it a big thumbs up. Feel free to hit that subscribe button down below. I post videos about diabetes related, plus more about my life. And if you do decide to subscribe, there's a notification bell. You can hit that, and anytime I upload something new, you will get a notification on any of your devices, and then you can watch my new videos as they come out. And as always, if you have any video suggestions for me, whether or not they're for a T1D with Maddie episode or just any videos about diabetes related or life that you want to see, please let me know down in the comments below. I'd be willing to share my thoughts, experiences, any type of things. You get the point. And until next week for more videos, take care, God bless, be kind, spread positivity, and be thankful. Bye, everyone.